So today we're going to deal with inflation 1.1, an extremely critically important topic for UPSC preparation and life in general. You will read almost on a daily basis there's some mention of inflation or price rises or onion prices have increased or pyaz महंगा हो गया and something like that, and government are worried and literally shaking. So you should know the basics of inflation because it will help you in UPSC answering both prelims as well as mains, presented by me Roman Saini, and this is an academy where you're watching all these cool videos. Anyway, I'm just trying to impart high quality accessible education, and if you want to know more you can read online. Please spread the word of this education revolution, and if you have any doubt or any query or any request for a particular video to be made by me, please comment below the video on YouTube or on the Facebook. This is the Facebook URL. So all of you are aware about this terminology inflation. Okay, so basically I'll deal with basic introduction. In layman's terms, sometimes inflation is synonymous with price rise, but that is not true. The causes may differ and it is much more elaborative economic concept. This is just a lay term. But anyway, inflation can be defined as a general rise in prices of goods and services in a particular economy. It might happen that in India inflation is 10%, but in USA it may be just 2%. In EU it may be even 0%. Somewhere it may be as high as 1000%. You just don't know what kind of inflation you can see. It depends upon that particular economy. In certain circumstances you will see demand pull inflation. How do you remember that? Just remember dimple because it helps in MCQ. D for demand and pull for pull. It helps. These are very stupid mnemonics, but it will help you. Trust me, it helped me a lot. Too much money chasing too few goods. This is how most of the teacher will describe it. This is a typical example of demand pull inflation. I'll tell you what it is, and this is the one which can be tackled easily with monetary policies. So RBI or any central bank for that matter, if it tweaks the monetary policies, it has a direct impact on demand pull inflation. But what happens with developing nations, like there is various cost push sides, supply side determinants. Like let's say if there is increase in oil prices, so production will obviously decrease, supply side will suffer, and there is nothing you can do about it. You do not have necessary technology, so your supply side cannot match the demand. So these constraints, they are usually cannot be tackled by just by monetary policy tackling. They are also called as supply shock inflation, and there are constraints from supply side measures. Okay, and the general statement which you should know and which you should write in all your essays and essay type answers in paper 3 is that inflation leads to erosion of purchasing power of money. This is the reason why 100 rupees today, let's say in September 2015, is not the same, rather it is obviously less than the 100 rupees in, let's say, October of 2015. Even in 1 month the power of money will decrease because of inflation. If there was no inflation, the power will be exactly the same. So in this introductory video we will talk about how it works with the demand pull inflation. So obviously all the economic students worth their salt knows this is the price and this is the quantity which has been demanded. This is a typical downward sloping curve, and this is called as basic microeconomic principle. This is called as demand curve. Obviously, as you know, as the quantity demanded increases, price tends to decrease. This is a general principle. But now imagine government regime has changed or taxation. For example, in Make in India campaign, we have reduced the corporate tax from 30% to 25%. So now imagine for this particular price, the quantity demanded was this much. But now since quantity demanded will be more because you have more disposable income, so something like that will happen. Let's say this quantity has shifted from here to here, and now you will see that price has to be increased accordingly if the supply cannot match it. So price will come somewhere here. So now the new curve which you will draw will be something like this. So as you can see, demand has pulled it, and that is why it is called as demand pull inflation. I hope you got this point, and this is also called as rightward shift of the demand curve. Similarly, it can be explained for the supply side curve as well, but that will be cost push inflation. So this was a basic diagram. Anyway, moving forward, so these are some related terms which you'll encounter a lot, like stagflation, slowdown, then it will be followed by recession, then depression, disinflation, deflation, reflation, misery index, and finally Phillips curve. So we will tackle one by one in this introductory video. So let's start with stagflation. Stagflation is nothing but if just two words combined, unemployment plus inflation, and both have an extremely high rate. So inflation is also high, unemployment is also high. In these two terms, the entire definition is finished. This is all for Gyanbazi. But anyway, situation in an economy when inflation and unemployment both are at high levels, and this is seen, especially this counters what is called as Phillips curve. This is an exact counter of Phillips curve. I'll teach you what is Phillips curve. So this is exception to Phillips curve. Phillips curve is only valid in short run. Anyway, we will deal with it in the last. So inflation is continuing for a long period, okay, and it affects the input prices, okay, plus it also affects the demand for goods and services. What will lead to, it will not only lead to inflation increasing, but since the input prices are affected, so wages will not be able to provide it at the same level, so unemployment rate will increase. So stagflation is nothing but high inflation plus high unemployment, and in simple terms it can refer to persistent high inflation combined with high unemployment and stagnant demand in a country's economy. Now, if you can't have employment, the wages will go down and the demand will also stagnate, and this will become a vicious cycle. So this was stagflation in basic introductory terms. So after stagflation, we will deal with deflation and disinflation. So I'll tell you very in simple terms. Just see this graph. So let's say this price of a banana is 10 rupees here. So if this price goes up, let's say this becomes, let's say, 12 rupees or 13 rupees. So this is because of inflation, okay. Now if it is sustained at 13 rupees, but again it becomes 11 rupees. So the rate of inflation has come down. Now this particular thing is called as disinflation, okay. And let's assume if it falls below 10 rupees, the original price, and it becomes, let's say, 9 or 8 rupees, then this becomes what is called as deflation. Is that understood? So this is deflation. Deflation is exact opposite of inflation. Deflation is decrease in the prices. So complete opposite or reverse of inflation, because there is fall in the general price levels over a period of time. And when the inflation rate falls below 0%, that is negative inflation rate, is deflation, while disinflation is a slowdown in the inflation rate. So as you see in Asian crisis of 1997, a similar phenomena was observed. So in Hong Kong, it was seen in the form of deflation, and it continued till the year 2004. Is that understood? So this was certain example, and in simple terms you can say that the falling prices, it occurs when output of goods and services, it increases much more than what the volume of money in the economy is present. So this is a complicated definition, but I explained you in the as simple terms as possible. Now moving forward, what is slowdown? Slowdown is a very basic, very layman's term, which means any decline in economic activity. So if your like basically your demand is decreasing or supply is decreasing, or in general your growth is decreasing, a decline in economic activity which affects everything around it, this is called a slowdown. This is a very basic definition. Now it is, slowdown is usually followed by recession if not controlled, okay. Now continued slowdown will lead to recession, and continuous recession will result into depression. So this is a basically cycle: slowdown leading to recession, leading to depression, okay. Now what is recession? Recession is a situation when there is negative growth rate. See, in case of USA the growth rate is 1 to 2% roughly speaking. In case of India, the growth rate in last 5 years has been around 6%, something like that. But it is still increasing. So if you have 100 rupees, it increases by 1%, so it becomes 101. So the growth rate is positive. What if the your 100 rupees become 99? Your GDP was $100 billion, it becomes 99. Then it is a negative growth rate. When these negative growth rates are seen in 2 successive quarters, for example, between January and March of 2015, if you compare it with the same quarter of last year and you see a negative growth rate, and this is followed in again in April to June 2015 vis-a-vis 2014 quarter. So in 2 successive quarters, then you are set to enter into a recession. I hope it is clear now. So some of the indicators of recession include like slowdown in the economy, there is investment usually falls, FIIs take their money away, there is no FDI investment, people usually don't invest, they tend to invest less, then there is fall in the output of the economy. So these are all indicators of recession, and it is a very vicious cycle unless acted upon. And in simpler terms, it is a period of temporary economic decline where trade and industrial activity they are reduced to a bare minimum, and it is generally identified by fall of GDP in 2 successive quarters. So this is another definition of the same thing. So I hope recession is clear now. Now what is depression? See, depression like in psychological terms, it is an extreme form of something, okay. So you may feel your mood is off someday, but if it is persist for too long, it can result into depression. So similarly in economics also, if recession continues for too long, and it can lead to depression of the economy. Everything is synonymous with 1930s depression. That was the first time a large scale massive depression was seen, started with US of A, United States of America. Successive years of recession can lead to depression. This is a rule of thumb. This is how we define depression. And some of the indicators of depression include like huge fall in demand. So in recession you are seeing fall in demand, there is huge fall in demand. So take it to extreme basically. And if there is huge fall in demand, so obviously consumption will also see a lot of fall. And business confidence is at ultra low, morale is down, and all this leads to decreased investment in business, and eventually there will be decline in output of the economy. So basically it's a very very vicious cycle. And one of the example, obviously I've told you, 1930s Great Depression of USA. It is also spread to other parts of the world, it was not limited to USA. Now depression in simpler terms, long and severe recession in an economy or a market. So this was depression for you in short. Now what is inflation spiral? See, it's a very very interesting phenomenon. I'll explain you how. So what happens is, this is also called as wage price spiral. So for example, your demand has increased, okay, your demand of the goods increased because your wages are high. So you will tend to meet this demand by increasing the prices of the good. Now the prices of the good are more, so you will, the wages, the workers will demand more wages, so you have to increase the wages. Again it will pull the demand up, again the prices will be increased. Then this becomes a vicious cycle. It becomes a trilogy of increased demand leading to increased prices leading to increased wages. So this is basically called as wage price spiral. Okay, so basically in definition terms, because we need it for mains exam, an inflationary situation in an economy, because it occurs because the process of wage and price interaction, as I've told you, wages press prices up and prices pull wages up. So this is an inflationary spiral, and can explain the first the inflation which occurred because of this spiral was in 1935 in the US of A economy. Now what is reflation? So reflation is a situation. What happens is, like, let's say your economy is in deflation, okay, and now it's a vicious cycle. What is a vicious cycle? It is a positive feedback loop, and it will go on increasing in intensity. So now government will go and it will increase its expenditure, it will increase the subsidy, it will put money in the people's hand, it will increase the money supply in the economy, it will reduce the tax rates. So by combining these features, what will happen is, the money, the purchasing power of the economy, the people will increase, and it will lead to reduction in unemployment because now wages can be provided, and obviously demand will increase when wages increases, and it will lead to revival of economy. So in simpler terms, revival of economy by higher public expenditure, tax cuts, interest rate cuts by the government is reflation. So in a very very standard definition is act of stimulating economy by increasing the money supply. Again this is the keyword, by increasing the money supply or by reducing taxes, which obviously will lead to increase in money supply. This is one and the same thing. Seeking to bring the economy back to the long term trend, that is the positive growth rate, and reduction in deflation. This is usually followed after a dip in the business cycle to revive the public sentiment. So this was reflation for you in basic introductory terms. Now what is excessive reflation? Now what happens is, see, fiscal deficit will rise because government is expending like crazy, tax rates are also reducing, so revenue is also decreased, so deficit will increase because your expenditure is going down, revenue is expenditure is going up, revenue is going down, so deficit will widen. Okay, so extra money is printed for this purposes, as we have seen in case of Zimbabwe. It went all out, it printed even $1 trillion type of notes, and it lead to hyperinflationary condition. So see, it is the like ultra reverse of what is happening. Same thing happened in case of Germany after World War One. So people used to burn their currency to make tea. If you don't know the story, you can read about mark, that is their currency back then. Anyway, it is generally printed at very higher level of growth. Okay, wages will increase, and but there is no improvement in unemployment. Is that understood? Because the fiscal deficit is continually rising. So basically when economy is crossing a cycle of recession, this is another angle of putting the definition of reflation. And when government takes some economic policies, and there are certain goods will see sudden and temporary increase in their prices, so this is again a type of reflation. So we should tend to, government should tend to avoid excessive in any domain. Now misery index, this was created by Arthur Ocon. This is not very important, but just I thought I'll mention it. Basically, when you add the unemployment rate to inflation rate, this is again a combination of Phillips curve, different things. Basically, you're giving an index to it, and when both a higher rate of unemployment and worsening of inflation, it will lead to some socio-economic cost for a country. You don't need to delve into that too much, but just remember there is some concept called misery index. In case if it is asked in PT or mains, then at least you have some clue. Now finally for today we have the Phillips curve. Phillips curve is a very simple curve. I'll draw it right here. What happens with Phillips curve is it's basically something like this. A curve will appear. So this is basically called as 1 x is inversely proportional to y. So as x increases, y decreases. This is a typical curve. None will approach to 0. So this is unemployment here, and this is inflation. So as you can see, when inflation is very high, unemployment is at a very low level. Okay, but when you see when inflation is very low, unemployment is very higher level. So it is saying basically when you have inflation, you tend to have employment. This is a general what is called as the conclusion which is drawn. So as the inflationary policies are adopted by government, it will lead to generation of employment. Okay, this is what Phillips curve is saying, but this is only true in short term. Okay, again I'm telling you, inflation and unemployment have a stable and inverse relationship. True, lower the economy's rate of unemployment, more rapidly wages will rise, obviously correct, but it is again applicable only in short run. This was propounded by Milton Friedman. He got Nobel Prize in 1976. So if he said then and there in 1968 that it will fail in long run because, and I quote his statement, inflationary policies cannot lead to generation of employment. It will always lead to unemployment in longer run. So Phillips curve is no longer the gold standard. It is used barely and it is used in modified form. But since UPSC is fond of asking such questions, that's why I mentioned it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this introductory video. So do spread the word as much as you can, and please be a part of this education revolution. I'll really appreciate that. Join the Unacademy revolution, and do follow me on Unacademy, and do hit the thumbs up if you really like the video. And these are the URLs where you can ask your query, and these are the Twitter handles. And do spread the education for all revolution. And thank you for watching the tutorial. Have an awesome day.